Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Laura Hanson with Connect My Brain. We are so glad that you're tuning in. This series is all about different cases that I've had over the 27 years of practice and really trying to put some of those incredible personal moments, journeys, experiences that other people have gone through and doing work with us here at Connect My Brain, the changes that they found in their lives. And today, I've got goosebumps all over me. I call those Holy Spirit bumps. And I am so excited. I received an email last week from some very, very dear friends of who I helped their daughter. And I asked if she would come on and share her story. That way we can see in full bloom a very personal experience that somebody went through, the tribulations that her family, her daughter have experienced and where they are today. And then we have a special treat for you at the end to share some very exciting information with you. So Debbie, I am so excited, first of all, to see you. You all hold such a dear place in my heart, and to have been part of KG's journey has been just such an important part of knowing the power of the Holy Spirit in our lives and bringing people together. So without further ado, this is Debbie, and Debbie is going to tell us the magnificent journey of KG.
Yes, you said seeing me gives you goosebumps, but seeing you is bringing tears to my eyes. So I hope I can get through this. You've talked about KG. Well, I will say that her full name is Kgakgamatso, which means miracle. And her life is a miracle all the way up and through meeting you. What you did for us was truly a miracle. So I can't wait to get to that part. My husband and I were married for 18 and a half years and had not been able to have any children. We were living in Africa at the time, and we had looked into adopting before, but the country that we lived in really hold tightly to their children. They don't like foreigners adopting them. And then out of the blue, this was the beginning of the miracle, we got a call from a social worker asking if we would be willing to adopt a baby girl who had been orphaned in an accident. And she had a great-grandmother still living. Her mom, okay, let me tell about the accident first, because that's the huge part.
It really
She
is.
was born to a 16-year-old AIDS orphan. So there was no grandmother. The mother was a teenage student. She was riding out in a remote area in Africa in the front of a pickup truck with two other adults, and she was holding the baby in her arms. And KG was 10 days old. KG was the baby. And something happened, an accident happened late in the afternoon. The pickup truck they were riding in rolled apparently numerous times, and all three adults died on the scene. And because it happened in such a remote area, no one found KG until the next morning. So at 10 days old, she survived the entire night lying on the ground in the African wilderness with severe brain injuries. And when my husband heard her story, he named her Kgakgamatso, which means miracle. So she was taken to the hospital and kept there for about 6 weeks before we were called. They didn't tell us the story until we had said that we were interested in adopting her. And then we went to the hospital to see her. And I was shocked. She had huge lumps on either side of her head. One eye was huge and protruding, and the other eye was closed, and she looked like a cyclops to me. But they said she was fine. And we went back out to the car. My husband and I got in the car, and I couldn't wait to hear what he thought. And he turned to me and said, "Isn't she the most beautiful baby you've ever seen in your life?" And I just looked at him and said, "I can't believe I believed you all these years when you told me I'm beautiful." So I kept visiting her in the hospital for the next week and a half, and she was kept lying face down in a plastic bin 24 hours a day, except once every 4 hours, they picked her up and poured tried to pour formula into her mouth. They wouldn't use bottles because of sterilization. So most of the milk, of course, ran down her. She was very malnourished and tiny, starving. She cried incessantly, except when I held her, and they let me come and hold her. And we took her home when she was 8 weeks old. And while we were visiting her in the hospital, we noticed that her eyes didn't seem to track us at all. And since we'd never had babies, we didn't really know what was normal for a 2-month-old, but we felt that was a little unusual, even though the hospital gave us a letter when they discharged her to us saying that she was fine. So we got home and we talked about it, and we decided to take her to a mission hospital about 40 minutes outside the capital city where we were living. So we took her out there, and this very kind, very experienced mission doctor looked at her. The only equipment she had was an ultrasound. So she did an ultrasound on KG's brain, and it showed a big black hole. And she didn't make any conclusions. She said, let's just wait and see. Well, in the meantime, because of the pending adoption and, friends who were doctors in America were conversing with us and expressing concern that she needed to be seen immediately by not a professional, because they were professionals, by specialists. So we got permission to take her down to South Africa, and we were told there that she had hydrocephalus, and they did more scans, CT scan, MRI. They said she had hydrocephalus and needed to have a shunt put in. Well, she was admitted to the hospital to have that shunt, but a couple of other doctors who were on staff there were hesitant. It was the neurosurgeon who wanted to do the surgery, and a couple other doctors said, maybe we should wait and see. It could be something else. So we were getting mixed signals, and we knew nothing. Yeah. We just wanted to get her back to the States where we felt like we could get better, more developed care. I take it back. She had not had an MRI. They could not do that. So this neurosurgeon was completely confident she needed that. So we went ahead and admitted her to the hospital to have the shunt. And then I prayed that night, Lord, please, if she should not have this shunt, because shunts, as you know, can have many constant complications.
Yes, they can.
Especially if you don't need one.
Right.
So I just prayed if she should not have this, please somehow stop the surgery. And when we went in the next morning, they said, your daughter can't have the surgery. Her white blood cell count is up. So you need to take her home until she's well. So we took her home and we're like, that surgery was not meant to be. Let's get her back to the States. So we managed to get the adoption expedited. We were fostering her. We were supposed to foster her for a long period of time. I can't remember how long, but the government there just bent over backwards to help us get her, to help the adoption get through fast. So we adopted her on 4 months of age. And then we had trouble getting her jumping through all the hoops to get her back to America. We finally ended up getting back here when she was 7.5 months old. And she had MRIs that showed it was not hydrocephalus. It was profuse brain atrophy. And it was diffuse. It was throughout her brain. When she was 10 years old, a neurologist told me that 75% of her brain had been injured. Wow. So she had severe brain injuries, and we got her enrolled in Babies Can't Wait here in the States. She had occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, vision therapy, and even music therapy. And she started preschool, special education preschool at 3 years of age. She went through till 5 when she aged out. And at that point, we felt she was doing well enough to go back to Africa. So we went back to Africa, and we had fairly good physical therapists there, but nothing else. We had a good occupational therapist for a few months, and then she left to go overseas for a better job. So we were there for about 13 years with pretty much nothing except physical therapy. And of course, we came back to the States every once in a while to visit. Well, on one of these visits, I think it was 4 years ago or 4 years ago, we got back to the States, and KG, I don't know if it's because of being ejected from the vehicle, that she has deeply embedded in her this fear of flying through space and the trauma and abandonment and everything that happened after that. I think it's in there inside of her. And being off the ground the vision contributes to that because she doesn't
Sure.
have depth perception or anything like that. But being off the ground and moving in space is just terrifying for her. And every time we flew, it got harder and harder. She would be screaming on the airplane, put this plane down. It's not safe. It's going to crash. I mean, she would just scream. And of course, that's the other passengers are like not comfortable with that. So I was beginning to fear that one of these days we're going to get stuck on one side of the ocean. And I hope it's the Africa side because that's where we lived. So if we get stuck, I want it to be at home. Unfortunately, it happened here in America when we came home for a visit. And we went to get on the airplane to go back to Africa, and we boarded the plane. We didn't make it through first class, and KG just had a massive meltdown, and we had to get back off the plane. And my husband went ahead. He had to get back to Africa. I stayed in America with KG, and we went through that scenario 2 more times where I got onto the plane with her, and she had a meltdown, and we had to get off before the plane ever took off. It's a 16-hour flight, and they don't let people stay on the plane. They didn't even have to ask us to get off. I volunteered because I didn't want to stay on the plane with that happening.
Right.
So I had been looking into desperate to find someone to help KG cope with this and get back on the plane. And I prayed and prayed and prayed about it. And I don't even remember what I happened to Google that brought you up. And I sent you an email. I told you the story, and I've emailed other doctors out of the blue before and never heard anything back. And I honestly did not have much hope of hearing back from you. I heard back from you immediately, and it was so compassionate and entering into our story and wanting to help us. So we made contact with you. You were located in Athens at the time. You saw KG for a 1-week program, and she made such good progress that we signed on for more to finish this. And I think we worked with you for 2 months, was it?
Yeah,
I think.
yes.
She went every day for one of those months back and forth to Athens. And it was so, so, so worth it. She made monumental achievements and progress, as you can testify. And we went through, we got to the airport to go back after she graduated. And this time we didn't even get on the plane. She started crying and said, I can't do it. I can't do it. And I went to the gate, made all the arrangements to leave and said, we can't get on the flight. I contacted you and told everybody, we didn't make it. And then I got home, and instead of unpacking all my stuff, which I usually would just unpack and settle in because I wanted to give her more time to grow and get over this. Instead, I just for 2 days, I prayed, and then I asked my sister to take us to the airport. 2 days later, we tried again, and she got on. And it was the craziest flight ever. A lady passed out at KG's feet, literally just passed out. All the medical people on board were back there working on her at KG's feet. And she was so calm about it. And then we flew into the worst thunderstorm. It was horrific. I mean, stuff was flying, and everybody had to, the flight attendants had to sit down. And that was shortly before landing, fortunately. But she coped through that even. And here we are back in America. So she's obviously done one more flight since then. And she's also riding horses now, which is every time I see her on the back of a horse, I say, this is a miracle.
Yes.
So thank you, Dr. Laura.
Well, it was, now I remember, didn't she say something when she either got on that last flight or something in the flight itself? She said something like, everything's going to be okay, or something like that. That's one thing I remember you sharing with me. What was that?
I don't remember exactly what she said, but she was determined she was going to do it. And that is something that you built in her, the confidence that she could do this. You really worked on her positivity, her state of mind. I'm not the person that can teach that. So I try not to let my anxieties this is going to be a disaster. I try not to let that bleed onto her, but I find it very hard to go above that and make her confident. So,
Well, I like in this series, what I've been doing is here's like the background, the case. What were some of the things that I found, and then how did I address it? And like I can remember distinctly when I first started working with her, as she walked, she did more of a rocking motion versus a typical heel toe type of gait.
yes, she lumbered like a jaunty bear.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll let you say that. So immediately, just, when you're looking at somebody, you're gonna start the minute you see them. And even before that, like the communications that you and I had regarding the accident and being that little baby, and where was her neurology at the time. And her neurology was fresh and new, and it literally was all about that Moro reflex. And it's very easy in adding a trauma to the beginning of her life to get locked into that state. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to refer to reflex issues as invisible injuries or invisible situations, because most people can't see the reflex still firing, but what it does to the individual is remarkable. So that was immediately in my mind, was going after the reflexes with her and then getting her posture. So the one thing I loved adjusting her, because you got this sense that in those moments where my hands were connected to her body, she felt connected. And that's one of the things I see with chiropractic care. And then we did lots of physical movement, things that she would have missed, that her neurology needed. And I can remember when we had her up on the iJoy, the unstable skateboard thing, and her getting that sense of confidence in herself, that even though I'm standing on something moving around, I can learn how to be stable. And, that's the most incredible part of human neurology, is that if you go back far enough, if you give it the brain, the nerves, etc., if you give it what it needs, I like to refer to it like a set of dominoes. It's going to go. It's going to go forward. So that's the premise of looking at somebody that unfortunately missed a lot of stuff, but boy, she was so willing. And then we also started doing neurofeedback with her, and she did terrific at neurofeedback. So she was literally able to participate with the entire program. Now, you just said something else, and we didn't necessarily talk about this one. So I'm certainly willing, if it doesn't feel comfortable or you don't want to talk about something, that's okay too. This is a very transparent platform, okay? And it's a safe platform. So, but you just said something that you couldn't have built in the confidence because of the things that you were going through. And so I really appreciate that, because I see this so much with parents and their kids, and being willing to look at it and say, this is something I can't do, but I can find somebody to help me. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? What was all of this for you from the very beginning? Just, highlight, where was your state of mind during this experience?
Okay, I will say that I've done a great job of giving her confidence about being clever and sweet and kind. Those kinds of positive attributes. But when it comes to there being a possibility of a meltdown or behavior in public, that's one of the hardest things I think for parents to go out and face. And it was particularly hard in Africa because children with disabilities, at least in where we were viewed as a curse. They were not seen out in public. They were hidden away at home. And I took KG with me everywhere. I told her that we were ambassadors for children with special needs. She went with me everywhere, but I always was on a little bit of edge, like, I hope this is a successful mission and not a disastrous one, because I've had to have security guards carry her back to the car for me when she fell apart.
Wow.
But that was something I was committed to doing. However, when it came to the airplane thing, I did not feel positive at all, because I was so, what if we get on this plane and the door shuts and we get up in the air and she has a meltdown? That's all I could think about. And I just couldn't go past that with her. I needed you to take her past that.
Well, it's such an important part because, you know, your story is a very obvious one, but there are a lot of children that have meltdowns, even here in the States.
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine what that felt like to have the responsibility of taking care of this life, but then also making sure that in the public's view, everything is okay. And the part of this is that I really want to help people understand, including me. We are that feedback to these little beings, and it starts in the womb and it goes to about 7.5, 8.5 years. And this is why they truly are little acorns, because they're following. And when our lives are stressed, rather real or imagined, okay, because there's a lot of things going on in the world right now, but no matter what, even when we try to hide it, there's an energy that is there. And children absolutely pick up on it, and it becomes a role model. I see it over and over and over again. And this is why, like in my space, I always tell the parents, I'm not just working with your child, I'm working with your family, because at the end of the day, that little girl's got to go home with you. And I need you to see this understanding so that we can continue to move the child forward. And a lot of times it really is about getting this foundational piece of ourselves better so that we can do the work that needs to be done for the child. And I see it all the time. Well, I got to tell you, it's probably been one of the greatest journeys being with you guys. And then why did you guys come back to the States?
Why we're here now?
Yes.
We came back 3 years ago for 2 weddings and a reunion. KG was 19 at the time. And like I said, there was nothing for her over there. I had homeschooled her the best I could. She never was capable of learning to read or write, but she's very, very bright and clever in her own ways.
Yes, she is.
So when we got back over here, I just kind of checked into things that were available here for her. And I'm sure you've heard of ESP, Extra Special People, the program for people with disabilities in Athens. It had all kinds of things, classes and program, fun things, activities that she could do. And then I found out that the school system actually lets students stay until they're 22. So she had a window where she could make up 3 years in with professional teachers, professional educators, and special needs specialists. So my husband and I talked about it, and we decided that this is a season that I needed to focus on KG, on making up what she's lost.
That's great.
For the past 3 years, she's been going to school, and she has the most amazing, God just made everything up at the very, very end, the most amazing teacher in Parapro. So she actually ages out this semester. And I've been dreading, what happens when she turns 22? What happens when she turns 22? Well, her teacher went to the school system and got approval for her to return as a volunteer in her classroom.
Oh,
so
that's great.
She gets to keep going. She'll still be learning because she'll be in the classroom, and she'll be with people that she already knows and loves. And she will be a help. She's such a joy and a delight. She loves to help. And so she'll be learning also as a volunteer. So it's just such a great answer to prayer.
Oh my gosh, that is so fantastic. Well, we promised a little special treat. So let's share this screen over here and let everybody see. This is KG's blog. It's a blog, right?
Yes.
And then she's written, though, is this her second book?
The first book I wrote was called K is for Keeps, and that's the story of her life up until she was about 8 years old. Then I wrote 4 short stories for children, and this is one of them. And they're sold individually as ebooks, but they're compiled, 4 of them, into one paperback book. And then following that, I also wrote another book about this is a children's story also, about KG making friends with a boy from China. And they're all true stories about disabilities, friendship, adoption, cross-cultural living, life in Africa. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the blog, and this is called thelifeofspice.com. I love that little name. That's just awesome. Is it okay if I show a picture of KG?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay, so what we want you to do is go over to this blog. Where is the book available?
It's on Amazon.com, and there's a link in the blog to the book.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, so here's KG. Isn't she a treasure? I'm telling you, KG's African Adventure. So I'm encouraging people that listen to the podcast. This is an amazing miracle. It's an amazing story. And it's not just about getting on a plane, even though we know you know better than me even, but we know what an accomplishment that was. But this is hope. And right now, I believe this is what our world desperately needs. It needs hope because there are so many things going on that feel discouraging. And when we can get outside of ourselves and read what somebody else has gone through and brought themselves forward, it's hopeful. So I would really encourage all the listeners, share this with everybody. I'm going to even ask my podcast manager to get this one out as quickly as possible so that we can put maybe some Christmas evergreen around it. And what a great Christmas present to give someone. So please share this. Thelifeofspice.com is where the blog is. The book, and the link to the book is also right. I think it's right up here. Right here. Okay. So if you can share that with people, and let's share this incredible miracle of KG, her mom, and her dad. Debbie, thank you so much for being with me.
My pleasure. I'm so happy to see you again.
I know. And you guys are always welcome over here. So if you're in the area, always feel free to stop by. I remember when you first got back, you stopped by, and that was such a treat. So whenever you are able, just come on by.
We need to, because KG loves you dearly.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm not sure when you're going to hear this, but it is December 5th. It's Christmas season. And this is the time for all of us to come together and celebrate the life of Christ, not just during this season, but for always. If you want to reach out to me on connectmybrain.com, we do have a little area where you can plug in a question, and we're happy to respond and help whatever concern you may have. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year.